Hello and welcome back to Play iPredict. It's the show. It's the last one of the year, and we've dragged the two lads back again. That, of course, is OSullivan and Paul Flaherty. Welcome, guys. Before we get into it, a big shout out again to our sponsors, copystore.ie. Thanks again for sponsoring the overall football prize as well, which we'll announce the winner a little bit later on. And don't forget as well, if you are topping up on your coffee and your bits and pieces, that on the copystore.e there is a 5% discount if you just input the code PlayIPredict at the checkout. That will get you your discount there. So that's all the P's and Q's put to one side. Lads, there's not really a lot of other places to start the show really, but looking back on the final from the weekend gone by, Dublin have created history, 6 in a row. It was a conversation for many a year. I remember even conversations back to my parents as well when Offaly stopped Kerry going for 5. That was huge news. We talked about that for decades to come. I suggest we'll be talking about this team for decades to come as well. 6 titles is remarkable, really. And the scary thing is, without going too much down a rabbit hole, is you cannot see where they're going to ease off. It's a new manager. They've loaded a lot of new players, and they're still just waltzing out. And doing so, I suggest even at times it looks like they're doing it with the handbrake on. They look like they have a lot more in their tank. Really, you feel like if they want to, they could open up a bit more if they needed to. That's the scary thing for me personally. But there's going to be a lot of conversation. Talk to death really for the year is going to be. I know, although it is December, still a lot of year to be talking about the football before we come back to the earlier start next year. But justly as a start off point, this Dublin team, I'll go to the Kerry man in this, and this isn't a dig, but just to sometimes get the view from the opposition, will say it has to go down as one of the greatest. It's 6 in a row is just a remarkable achievement, Sean, isn't it?
Incredible, Jonathan. Look, if it's they are the best. There's no doubt about it. 6 in a row, that says it all. Never been done before. You've got some guys the other night that will collect their 8th All Ireland medal. I mean, down here in Kerry, we would have heard about the legends growing up that had 8 All Ireland medals, and down here they were like gods and still are like gods. Still very much revered and great footballers and great men to wear the green and gold. Now, for young Dublin people growing up, the likes of the James McCarthy's and these fellas, they have 8 All Ireland medals. That's an incredible achievement. And I suppose we can go into detail another time, or it can be talked about to death about the finances and the cards that are stacked in Dublin's favour in terms of population and everything like that, Jonathan. But at the end of the day, to win 8 All-Ireland medals, to win 6 All-Irelands in a row takes a massive amount of commitment, dedication, working at your game, self-sacrifice, talent. It takes all that. Yes, of course, you can talk about the outside factors that help you get there, but it has to come from within. It has to come from being well coached, listening to coaches from a very young age, and just really trying to get the best out of yourself every day you go up in the field. And the Dublin players have done that, and they have to be commended for that. They are the best football team in terms of winning All Irelands that I have seen. But for the rest of us, the Kerrys, the Galways, the Mayos, the Tyrones, we can't just lie down and applaud them. We have to start building and start looking to the future and see how can we get there and how can we turn them over. There was times on Saturday evening where you whispered quietly as a neutral, my God, could Mayo actually do this? They had Dublin possibly in a position where they could have done it. But again, we saw a bit of sloppiness from Mayo in the second half, particularly. I was disappointed with their second half performance. Thought there was no intent. It lacked the gusto and the drive we saw in the first half from them. And I think Dublin sensed that in a way. And in fairness, to Dessie Farrell, he introduced guys off the bench who saw Dublin over the line. And in the end, they really coasted to victory. They weren't under any serious pressure, which was a pity after what we saw from Mayo in the first half. Mayo responded well to both goals in the first half. to concede a goal after 13 seconds, everyone thought, oh my God, here we go again. But, you know, they reacted very well. You have to take your hat off to them. They stuck at it. And even when they conceded the second goal, you know, they stuck at it and they kept themselves in the game. But just never came out in the second half with that little bit of drive to push on and to believe really that they could turn Dublin over. And if Dublin sensed that in you, you know, they just turned the screw and they got over the line. And we're here today talking about immortality, really, 6 in a row, and who knows, you know, it could go to 6 or to 7 to 8. We don't know. We hope not, but at the moment there's no reason why Dublin can't go and add to those 6 All-Irelands that they've done already.
And just to bring you on that, Paul, as well, before we get stuck into the game, because I do think it is important to, no matter what your opinion is, and I repeat at the start, if you want to go down the rabbit hole that, you know, Sean just skimmed over there about the finances, etc., all the advantages that they have. But you have to strip it back. We are watching greatness. This is this team that we will talk about for generations to come. I think sometimes you have to appreciate how lucky we are in a way to be able to. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but I think you have to acknowledge the sporting greatness that we're watching unfold. It's almost like if you want to compare it to football or something like that, you know, Ronaldo and Messi, who's the best. Sometimes you hear the argument, you know, to take a step back and realize you're lucky to see them. But it feels like there's that there as well. And I saw a quote with Dessie Farrell after the game where I'm paraphrasing, but he touched on how he's sometimes surprised with just the mentality of the players, how they're able to keep on going and keep that drive going. But it has to be, I think you have to, there's definitely an argument to be made with the other situation. But I think it's important, firstly, that we don't just gloss over this and appreciate just how good they are. And that pains a lot of people, but that's the truth, really, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, they're absolutely exceptional. And just kind of go back to your point there about greatness. You think about the Kilkennys there, or Kilkenny, like with Cody there, let's say last decade, and like they were just phenomenal there, the way they just performed and they blow teams out of the water. And this is the exact same thing again that we're seeing circumstance. So like obviously me come from a hurling background, Kilkenny was just unbelievable watching all the things. Here it's a bit more, when's it going to stop, because it's kind of frightening how good Dublin are. And you got to take your hat off to them. Like they just seem to, their fitness levels, and just they keep running, and they don't John, if a game, let's say there's 15 minutes to go, there's 10 minutes to go, and they're even beating, let's say, a Laois or Westmeath or whoever, they'll still put on the points, and they won't, let's say, slack off performance-wise or anything like that. That really shows like that they're, you know, the character and the drive and what they've been taught, you know, in the background team or whatever. Like, you know, they're doing a really, really good job. So you just got to put your hat off to this Dublin team. They're just unbelievable. And you know, like I'm looking ahead there now, and the schedule came out for 2021 there in the last kind of hour or so, and you know, there's the final looks to be in June or July, and that doesn't give a lot of other inter-county teams a lot of time to kind of test this Dublin 7 in a row bid. They're going to find it very hard again. So you just got to, Dublin, they've been fantastic, and they've blooded a lot of new players there in, and with Dessie Farrell to bring something new as well to keep it fresh. So yeah, it's an unbelievable team.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it was just important that we did touch on that, because sometimes that gets lost in the conversation, I think. But look, let's have a quick look into the game then as well. And another thing that I just want to acknowledge is a point that I raised last week in terms of potential weakness from the Mayo goalkeeping and the Mayo goal kicks, kickouts, even if I get my words out. But we even ran a poll, and we're 71% of our followers on Twitter would have made the choice to go with David Clarke. That was the debate. We're going back to the Rodford 16 replay where he changed his goalkeeper, and look, we all know how that went as well. We thought that the conception really come into the game was that Mayo might struggle against Dublin. In fact, in reality, the strange thing was that it was almost the other way around. Mayo were absolutely excellent against the Dublin kick-out, and I think there's a stat doing the rounds where Cluxon had to go long 5 times in the first half, and they lost all 5 kick-outs, almost unrecognisable. And it was akin really to how much Mayo got right in the first half. But they like, obviously the the goal they conceded right from the throw-in, where O'Shea is beaten out by McCarthy and he bombs through. And I'm convinced that Dublin have that. Let's spread this open here coming through. We saw the replay goal against Kerry in the second half last year as well. It's definitely I think a pre-designed plan that they have. The disastrous start yet again for Mayo in an All Ireland final. We've seen them against Kerry before. We've seen them against Donegal. I don't know what it is. There seems to be a little bit of sluggishness or whatever, but it can't just be happening all the time. But despite that, as you touched on it, Sean, they played very well in that first half.
They did, yeah. We spoke coming into the game about what needed to go right for Mayo, and one of those things was their own kick-out. And I have to say, they were excellent. You know, Clark there was a lot of pressure on his shoulders coming into the game, but he, in fairness to him, you know, he stood up. The guys outside him stood up. There were options on his long kick-out and his short ones. They were very good. And not only that, as you quite rightly said, they put pressure on Cluxton, and they forced Cluxton into a few difficult ones, and he had to go long, and they were winning those as well, whether it be from primary possession or breaking balls. So that was definitely one thing they got right. The early goal was a bad score to concede. I mean, look, it's straight from throw-in, and as you said, that is a preconceived move that Dublin have, where if they win the ball from the throw-in, they're going straight down your throat, and James McCarthy came straight down the middle. Could he have been gotten to? Could Mayo have given up a free? Possibly, maybe not. Maybe the move had just happened so quickly that they didn't have time to react. But it was a desperate start to the game. Now, they quickly got themselves into their stride, and they were 3 points. They had 3 points up on the board. In fact, the score after 2.5 minutes was a goal to 3 points. So they wrote that one off straight away. But again, it was a bad score to concede.
It's the long term.
The second goal for me. Well, it is, yeah. It's a killer for. It can be it really hits you for morale. But look, they kept the heads up. It was the second goal for me that really underlined. You know, Mayo had put such hard work into that first half, and they were in a great position. They really had Dublin under serious pressure. They had the mark. Even though we don't like it, Cillian O'Connor was making hay with the mark inside. And then they concede that goal from Con O'Callaghan. And I know it was a well-worked goal. You know, Bugler came in, he used his strength, he slipped it across to O'Callaghan, who got the punch, and it went under David Clark's legs. But again, I just felt it was a goal that Mayo will be disappointed when they look back. They conceded it. After all their hard work, all of a sudden they had another goal conceded, and they had to start again. And if you keep giving Dublin those opportunities to just keep themselves in the game, it boosts their morale and it chips away at yours. And as much as Mayo tried to repair the damage, particularly of that second goal, they could never really get it back. And, you know, the second half just turned into again, you know, I just felt Mayo were always kind of swimming against the tide, and you just expected Dublin really to push on and get over the line, which they did.
Yeah, and just on that, Paul, now as well, and this, I have to say, I think I put in the WhatsApp group at the time, but there was two little things that obviously a game is full of instance, and it's sometimes unfair to pick, you know, ones out because there's so many things that happen out and there's so many factors if you go through with a fine comb. But in my head, from watching it first time, there was two things that stuck into my head at the time. I remember going, here, Mayo are in trouble here. First one, they were both just before halftime or coming up to the halftime whistle. The first one, Mayo had a free, maybe about 30-40 yards out over on the far side in front of the Cusack, and they went to take it short. Dublin intercepted it. It came down then where Kilkenny got the ball in the corner, and he came out and hit it. He's actually first point against Mayo in the championship. I think there was a stat was coming out, but a beautiful score where he's down in the corner, he comes inside and he does that little drop kick with the inside of the right and spins it over, and you go, wow. And then there's the other one was just a couple of minutes after that then as well. O'Shea's bulling down in goal. He probably had an opportunity to kick it over. He felt like it to me, just looking at it first glance, it felt like, you know, we can go a bit more here. We can get the juggler, go for goal. He's probably fouled, to be fair. There definitely comes into serious contact, overruns the ball, and out it comes. Now, Dublin don't end up scoring for them. But those two little things just before half time, for me, just felt like there's so much work being done here, but those few things are just going to come back and be that little killer. It just felt to me, I'm not sure, did you think something similar, Paul? Or
Yeah, definitely. I don't know who, I think it might have been Jim O'Connor or someone won that free on the far 65, and then Conor Loftus tried to put it into the middle, and someone came in to intercept it. And that was just it's just before half time. It's 2-5 to 10 points. If Mayo make an opportunity out of that, it's 2-5 to 11. It's a draw game at half time. Then obviously they go up. Kieran Kilkenny it started off, I think it was Oisin Mullen was on him, and then someone else came in to try and double team him. And then he comes around, and just like that, he just a little speed of pace, and it looked like it was going wide, and it curled in just about, and that made it 2-6 to 10 points then for half time. So and the other one then about O'Shea, it's just pity he didn't hold on to it or make something out of it. But I thought Kieran Kilkenny, some of the points he came up with there was just he just seems to sense whenever there's half a chance on, he'll make full use of it. Just a quick little step, like Conor Callanan as well, just quick feed, and they just pop it over then, and they're really, really killer. So they were kind of I forget what point you're on about there actually, but yeah.
The thing about Kilkenny is he had missed a couple before that. He had actually, I think,
and some bad enough balls. So dragged one to the left, one side. Yes. You're thinking ooh.
Yep.
And I think even the commentators at the time in RT were saying, "Oh, he hasn't scored against Mayo in the championship." And then he comes down and pulls that one out of the bag.
It just shows you the supreme confidence that he has. He blocked those out, and the next ball he was taking it on again. If the option was there, he was taking it on, and he killed it. And as he said, it came from that ball given away by Conor Loftus. But that's another point we made on last week's podcast, lads. Mayo needed to take every possible chance they got, and I know that sounds very, very, it's nearly impossible to take every chance in a game. But because it's this Dublin team who we're talking about, you have to. I mean, Tommy Conroy, I know it was his first All Ireland final, and I don't want to be too hard on the young lad. He had a poor day at the office. When Mayo needed him, he pulled one wide in the first half. I don't even think it went wide. I think it dropped into Cluxton's hands. He took on some bad options. Second half, they brought on the likes of Cohen, who dropped balls into Cluxton's hands. That's the difference, lads. That is the difference right there. Mayo needed every single opportunity. Aidan O'Shea that time, even if he got a free out of it himself, but got nothing out of it in the end. Mayo needed all those chances. Everything needed to go over for them, and they didn't. And if you don't do that against Dublin, they'll sniff you out, they'll keep plugging away, and they'll eventually wear you down and beat you.
A small positive then, kind of just going on your point there, Sean, a small positive that I kind of wrote down was Oisin Mullen, it was his first All Ireland final, and I thought he got actually the score straight after the first goal in the match. And Ryan O'Donoghue then, I know he might have had a few eyes, but he actually got one or two frees, and he kicked a lovely point there in the first half from the outside of his boot. So a positive kind of on the Mayo thing. They had four, I think, I know Tommy Conroy may not have had a good day, but they had four new kind of first timers for an All Ireland final. So if Mayo get there next year, they're in around they'll have a small experience there. And Darren Cohen did come on, and he got a point actually. Well, they didn't get. It was 2-8 to 14, and I think Darren Cohen that was 20 minutes to go, and then Darren Cohen didn't got their last score in the 63rd minute. They only got one score in the last 20 minutes of the game.
I was going to say, is that, sorry to put it, Paul, did I read a stat? That was the only point from play in the second half. Is that correct for Mayo? I have to check that. I heard that stat doing their own.
I think you're right. It was freeze otherwise, yeah.
Pretty much. So just goes to show really even I know Cohen got slashed out of it, and people, but to be fair to him, he didn't really have a lot of options. Mayo were tiring at that stage. He didn't have runners on the shoulder. Yes, he was a little bit naive, and there's you're coming on, you're trying to make an impression, but to be fair to him either, the flip side is he didn't have a lot of options. Mayo were struggling to get players forward.
Yeah. And Paul makes a great point. Look, Mayo have to build on these young fellas now, and okay, they lost the All Ireland final. James Horner look back at this and say, I blooded Mullen, I blooded McLaughlin, I've blooded Tommy Conroy, I've blooded O'Donoghue. James Carr seems to be a fella with a good future ahead of him. that's the future. That's the future. You got to build on these guys now, and hopefully you get back to the same stage next year, and they'll be that year older, year wiser.
So the other thing then, really, I have to say, from the key moment for me, really, it happened. The incident itself happened just before half time. It is, of course, the McDade black card. I have to say, I thought it was a nonsense decision myself, but here we are. I know there was another. They probably got one each side in the shoulder on Keegan. Then I think it was Fitzsimons that smashed him down the chest in the second half. Then the two of them probably balanced each other out. I thought they were both wrong calls. But the black card in particular, it's not just the black card that happens. Again, I repeat, I personally thought it was quite harsh. I'm not sure what McDade is supposed to do in that scenario. It's one of those classic crossing moments. But the key for me really wasn't really whether that was a black card or not. It was the resultant of it. Like Mayo coming in at half time knew that they're an extra man for 10 minutes. You think that would be a huge advantage, that they would try and push on, maybe try and do what Dublin did initially and work a set move with an extra player. But it felt like to me that they didn't really make the most benefit of that. In fact, if anything, I know Mayo went a little flush just before the end of it, but for large periods of that 10-minute period, Dublin looked the dominant team. It looked like, if you didn't know, you'd thought that Dublin had the extra player. That's another, I know we're talking about small things again, but I think ultimately this one in particular, not making advantage of the extra player is probably the most, if you're James Horan and you're the Mayo management and the players, that's probably the most disappointing thing that you'd probably take out of the whole game. Obviously the result aside, but the fact that they didn't really push on with that, to me, do you think that you have to go a bit cautious against the Dubs for fear what they might cut you open, or do you think?
I know you were saying there that was the kind of final moment. I think the two goals as well, they were like, let's say Mayo got 10 scores in the first half. Dublin only got 8. Now, as good as they are, they got 8. Like, Mayo actually won the scores there. And then you look at the final score, 15 points, or 15 scores to 16 scores. There's only one score in it, I know they won by 5 points, but I think, was it a black card? Very harsh from the ref there. I don't know what he was supposed to do, as you said there, Johnny. It was kind of, but it was a black card anyway. The referee, whatever, he made the decision anyways. And you're looking in at half time, it's 6-10. Maybe it got into the heads of Mayo that they're a man down. We have to really, maybe they were trying too hard, that kind of way or something. But it just didn't happen for them in the first. The second half was really a disaster for Mayo. They only got, I think, as you said, 1 point from play. The rest were from frees. They didn't capitalise in that 10 minutes from the 35th minute to the 45th minute. I know on the 50th minute it was a draw game, 2-8 to 14 points. So they just kind of missed that period to really drive it home. I don't know, did they keep a man back, or did they press up in the 35th to the 45th minute? I didn't really see, did they fully press up? But they really, as Sean said earlier on, you have to take all the opportunities that you get, and they didn't take it with the black card in them 10 minutes anyway.
Yeah, on that, Sean, you'd feel like if the cards were turned, if that was Dublin coming out with an extra player for 10 minutes, that they'd have really killed the game completely. Are we reading too much? Are we reading too much into this?
No, I don't think Mayo. I don't think Mayo went for it. I don't think they veered away from their game plan. I didn't see anything in that 10 minutes to suggest that Mayo were going after Dublin's 14 men. I think they played it safe. They didn't look to push on at all. They just stuck to what they were doing in the first half, because I suppose from their point of view it was working to a certain extent. But I mean, they will probably look back and regret that they didn't maybe try something. To beat Dublin, you have to come with something different. Again, this is what we were saying coming into the final. You have to take every opportunity. Mayo had an opportunity for 10 minutes where they had an extra man. What did they do with it? Practically nothing. Dublin didn't look one bit fazed by it. They continued on playing as normal, which they were going to do anyway, because they backed themselves all the time. They never panicked. Mayo needed to instill a bit of panic into Dublin. They needed to try something to instill a bit of panic into them, get them thinking. Jesus, even if they had got a goal in that 10 minutes, it could have put Dublin thinking. But they just continued on playing as per normal, because they were still in the game. You know, maybe if they had been 5 or 6 points down when McDade got a black card, they might have gone for the jugular. But James Horan would have said, look, we're well in this as a contest. Let's keep doing what we're doing. We won't change it that much. But maybe looking back, you know, they should have maybe gone for something different in that 10 minutes. But, you know, by the time McDade came back on, Dublin were still in the ascendancy. And as you said, you know, from the outside looking in, it didn't look like Mayo had the advantage of an extra man at all.
And just on that, Sean, then as well, it felt like to me, like you know, I repeat, it's very easy watching from the comfort of your armchair, you know, sat back with your feet up with a couple beside you and being an absolute expert. But it felt like during that period, it would have been the time to maybe get O'Shea closer to goal, get someone else a bit closer, try and, you know, work a goal chance, just to try and spice it up a bit, just to try something different, because it felt like it was just the course of the game to me from watching it. Now, obviously, if you're there, you might see it a little bit more. There might have been variations where they did push forward or make alterations. But it felt like, you know, you flip the dice a bit. You try and work a couple of goals, because I'm struggling to think back now of many goal opportunities that Mayo created in the game. You know, I know you see Limerick and the hurling come on through and being the masters of winning games without goals. But in a game where you've conceded 2, you've conceded 1 straight away. It felt like that was a time just to roll it a bit, try something a bit different, try and get an overload inside with the extra player and try and make advantage of it. Am I being too critical with that in terms of that viewpoint?
Yeah, well, look, it can be difficult depending on how the game is panning out. But I mean, first of all, I think Aidan O'Shea played way too deep for too long. I think he was out around the middle of the field where he wasn't really needed. I thought they were coping okay outside around the middle of the field. Rowan and Loftus, Bar Loftus's you know, giveaway pass that we've spoken about, I thought he had a decent game.
Yeah, he had a good game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually quite like. I think he's definitely one for the future for Mayo. And Rowan himself and Rowan seem to have a good partnership going there. There was no need for Aidan O'Shea. How many times did we see Aidan O'Shea in a one-on-one position inside the edge of the square? There was one particular moment in the second half where I was shouting at the TV screen. I don't know who had the ball. You could see it plain as day. He was one-on-one inside with Johnny Cooper. They put the ball in. Cooper could not handle him. O'Shea won it, and Cooper pulled him down. There was talks maybe of a black card. He had him by the arm. There was no way Johnny Cooper was going to deal with Aidan O'Shea one-on-one under a high ball. So that should have been an opportunity. If I, as a guy on the sideline, if I saw that happening once, I could say, well, how do we make that happen again? Everything, it was perfect. The ball was kicked from the right angle. It was the right direction. It was floated. It was a diagonal ball, and it was perfectly in on top of O'Shea, where he could literally use his frame and his body to shield off Cooper, who was not going to be able to compete with him, and he had no choice but to pull him down. Go again. Was Cooper going to be left on O'Shea? Maybe he was going to do it again. He'd see another red card in an All Ireland final. They didn't. O'Shea was finding himself drifting out the field, linking play where there was no need for him. He should have been in around the house where he could have made a nuisance of himself and been a real focal point to the Mayo attack. It wasn't happening for Tommy Conroy, so it's not like he was going to be taking up space for him. They needed to come again with something different, and they didn't. They just told O'Shea drift out. Whether he was doing that under instruction or himself, I'm not sure, but it just wasn't causing Dublin any problems. I'm sure Johnny Cooper was absolutely delighted to see Aidan O'Shea out around the middle of the field. So again, I don't think Mayo played that card a lot when they should have. You know, it's direct football, but again, it could have troubled Dublin, but we'll never know because Mayo didn't stick to it. They did it once or twice, but not consistently enough to cause Dublin problems.
And then, Paul, for me, as if you want to go down to game changers or moments, it's the introduction of Howard and Mannion then as well, that were the finishers, I think people call them now. It's what the cool kids call it, substitutes at the moment. But the difference that both of those made was just when Mayo were tiring as well. To see these fresh quality players coming on, that's, again, it's another disheartening moment, but you felt like it was just you felt like you knew exactly this game is going only one way here right now. You see those being introduced.
I actually wrote down my notes there, the two players, Brian Howard and Paul Mannion, being so inspirational coming on. It was 17-14 in scores, let's say, and it was around the 60th, I think it was the 60th or the 61st minute. Dave Clark was giving Aidan O'Shea a ball. Someone came in and tapped it, and they I don't know who won a free then, but Paul Mannion from the real corner with his left foot, curled it in, 18-14. David Clark next kick out, he had to go long, and then Howard collected in the middle of the field. Just they're the kind of moments when you're talking there, like they really changed the game, and there's two subs that did that. They're very, very inspirational. And let's say I know Darren Cohen came on, let's say, and got a point, but the strength and depth of the Dublin team, the whole panel, the whole background staff there is just unbelievable. And they were definitely Howard and Mannion. I think the commentator even said, like, Brian Howard's only been on for half an hour, but he could be man of the match or something like that. Like, he was so influential in the game. So, like, when you can do that.
He kicked a great point himself as well, didn't he? Do you remember the one he cut
outside
across?
the foot?
Yeah, outside the right, just kind of bend it through.
Again, just, you know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's just a perception we have now of Mayo and Dublin when we're comparing both sides, but the Dublin subs come onto the field and they look like they're coming on as if they're going to boss the place. Mannion comes on there, he takes control. Howard comes on, takes control. They feel like they fit in and they're there. The Mayo players came on and, you got no impact. I know Cohen kicked a score, but there was no game changer. You saw Mayo subs coming onto the field and you never thought there was a game changer in any of them. That'll come from playing in All Ireland finals. It'll come from experience. Dublin have it. That was their, that they won 6 in a row, and the most of those guys have been involved in a lot of those. So that comes from playing at the highest level all the time, and it'll come from Mayo if they stay, if they keep going the way they are. But it's definitely an area. We talk about teams challenging Dublin in the future. It's one area where Dublin are at the moment streets ahead in that they have a ridiculous conveyor belt of talent. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a few retirements in the Dublin setup, of guys who, for instance, again, not writing their obituaries, but the likes of Kevin McMenamin and Paddy Andrews, these guys who now have 8 All-Ireland medals and didn't see any game time really this year. They're probably going to walk into the sunset with their record haul of medals. Will we miss them? I mean that in the nicest possible way. Dublin, Desi Farrell probably has a few of those Dublin under-20s who lost out to Galway in the final on Saturday. He probably has a few of them lined up to come straight in, the likes of Archer and these guys. It's ridiculous. It's a never-ending, at the moment it seems to be a never-ending conveyor belt of talent. And not only that, but they look like guys who fit in and feel at home in a Dublin senior team. Bugler, Paddy Small, even though Small had a quiet final, I thought he was taken off for Mannion. These guys are just coming into the team, and it's like they've played with Dublin for the last 5 or 6 years, and that's the one area where Dublin definitely have over their nearest competitors.
Yeah, when you say there that Paddy Small maybe not had an off day, but they when they can bring someone else in like that, Paul Mannion, Paul Mannion would start on any other inter-county team. Like, he could be even the captain. He's that good. Like, it's just where I don't know. It's going to be awful hard for another team to have that strength and depth. Maybe lads down in Kerry now with your minors there for the last 3 years. You wouldn't know. You might have a bit of lads coming and stuff like that, but it's frightening. It's kind of frightening.
Well, the thing about it is people talk about, you have to be winning minors and you have to be winning under 20 championships, and they're great, don't get me wrong. It's fantastic to get silverware. It gets young players used to winning, particularly in Croke Park. But the main thing is that you're all the time bringing through every season 2, 3, 4 quality players who are there to take up the mantle when guys go out the other end of their careers. And at the moment, Dublin have that perfected. They have it just right. When they lost the likes of Connolly, McCaffrey, Brogan, Rory O'Carroll, these guys in the last couple of years, they've just been able to replace them with as good as, if not better quality coming up from their underage structures. And you look at a lot of those Dublin fellas who have come in and won senior All-Ireland medals. A lot of them probably don't have minor and under 20 championships. I would say none of them have. But a lot of them now have 4, 5, 6 All-Ireland medals, senior All-Ireland medals, and because they were good enough and they were ready to seamlessly come into a senior inter-county setup when they came out of the under 20 grade or under 21 grade as it was at the time.
Yeah, we often say that about Corofin and Galway, that while they don't have the best record in terms of winning underage, they are the best in terms of underage, and the fact that everybody's coached to a certain level, they're taught the important things of the game. It's not the managers and with short-term goals aren't defined by just trying to get silverware straight away. They look at the bigger picture and look at the conveyor belt of talent that they've come through, despite not being a heavy hitter in terms of underage silverware success. I think they're definitely looking at the greater goal, and we are seeing little bits of evidence in that game as well. I have one last tangent off the game, and this is more of a general, I suppose, focus of the game. And I'll jump you on the spot here, Sean. You're guilty by association. Kerry, they're looking at Mayo, I suppose, fall short again in an All Ireland final. We're not going to go through all the other previous ones from years gone past, but is there a frustration, and looking, that would have been the Kerry side of the draw as well, coming through, that should have been us there this year? Maybe we could have the team that gave them, I suppose you can argue. I know Mayo have ran Kerry close a couple of times the last year with the replay and stuff, and everybody goes on about. I know Dan and Kerry that you say that he took 145 steps, I think is the latest calculation for the goal in the replay then as well. Isn't that right, with a bit of tongue in cheek? But is there, to me, if I was Kerry looking at that, I'm looking at that game with a huge sense of not wasted opportunity, but frustration that why weren't we there? We were probably good enough to be there to give them a rattle. Or am I being too cynical and short in my mindset here?
Yeah, look, I suppose we could debate it all day, Jonathan, but the short story is they weren't there. A Kerry-Mayo semi-final would have been a real interesting game, I think, because I don't think, a lot of people down here were probably mapping out the season and saw maybe Kerry being in a final, but, they would have had to get over a Mayo in a semi-final, with the greatest respect to both Cork and Galway, who would probably be the main competitors, although we saw Tip coming through in Munster. But it did look like it was going to be a Kerry-Mayo semi-final, and I think a lot of people were looking forward to that. And whoever came through was more than likely going to face Dublin. Now, I think it's not a frustrating thing, because you have to take every game on its merits. I think it's just from a neutral's point of view, Mayo potential small glimmer of hope on Saturday evening, that there was periods of that game where Mayo, if they had just, with a little bit more belief and a little bit more quality, could have caused an upset. But it didn't happen. And, they'll take something from that. The rest of the country will take something from that, because we're still talking about Dublin doing 6 in a row, but a lot of those finals have been very, very tight. And I know they ended up winning by 5 points the other night and at their ease, but when you take the game as a whole, there was potentially an opportunity for it to be a lot closer. So look, we're maybe grasping at straws. The other 31 counties are grasping at straws, but we have to grasp to something, because if we didn't, then what's the point in, the Kerry players going and doing their gym session tomorrow, or the Galway players getting out for a run tomorrow, individually getting out for a run tomorrow. They all have one goal in mind, and that is to try and beat Dublin and win an All Ireland. And we have to grasp to something. If we didn't, we'd pack it in.
And then, Paul, just to take it, my mind is wandering here now, which is always a dangerous thing, as probably you both know by now. But as good as the huge and how much we were cheering them on at the times in terms of, say, the breakthrough moments, and you look primarily at, say, the likes of Cavan and Tipperary winning their provisional finals, they did give me both, and you couldn't help but be on board unless you were from the opposition county involved. You couldn't help but cheering them on and stuff. But I'm thinking back now here as a complete and utter neutral head on ahead of me looking at this. Wouldn't it have been great if we had a situation where we had the heavy hitters in the semi-final, as much as, and I know this is, the Tipperary people and the Cavan people are probably not going to be best pleased, but again, just as a neutral coming through, it wouldn't have been great if we did get to see Dublin versus Donegal, Mayo versus Kerry, say, in the semi-finals, and then whoever makes it through. It felt like, to me, I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at too cynical, and the romantic nature of me is well and truly gone, and I'm a cynical old fool or whatever. But to me, it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity, because I would have felt that they would have been unbelievable games, and probably the ranking would have probably been more matched to each other. Your thoughts on that? Are you happy enough? I know you were on the Cavan bandwagon for a while there with your leprechaun or whatnot, but you can see the point I'm trying to make here. It would have been, like, say, the feast of football, for want of a better word.
Yeah. First of all, when your mind goes wandering, I don't want to know what's going on.
Don't worry, Paul. You had all your clothes on. Don't worry.
I know. Yeah, like, I know you're saying, like, if there was the top four, if the potential top four were in, for the semi-finals, what an epic, like, weekend of football that would have been. The reality is, we were kind of lucky to even get games this year.
True.
So, and with it's a new structure, you couldn't predict Cavan, and you couldn't predict Tipperary. Like, it's. And you couldn't predict COVID-19 as well, at the start of the year. So I think you can say that, but I think it was just glad that we got entertainment for the last 12 or 14 weeks. I don't know how many weeks it was, and like, some of the matches really, they made so many people's day, week, months, conversations, all the rest of it. So I know maybe you're saying that it would have been great to have the last four there, but my thoughts on it is that it was fantastic to get some of the, like, not even the Cavan and Tipperary, like, even Cork beating Kerry now, not digging here now, but like, it was a terrible day, and Cork were looking to get over the line.
Look at the face on him there, yeah, as he said, not digging, the grimace.
Like it was, a big high ball into the square, like, and your man, the AFL, I got the tap, but like, them games, like, they really, that probably lifted Cork, for the 2 or 3 weeks, and Cavan and Tipperary, they'll stay talking about that for till the start of next season. So I think it was just great to get the games, and it was just for the year that's in it. I think it was just. I'm not sure if they're going back. I don't think they're going back to the Super 8s for next year, but because that's when the kind of 8 top teams play each other, and they're all, like, in the last few seasons, they've been really, really tight games, and you wouldn't know. It's very hard to predict them, but yeah, I think we're just glad to get the games this year.
Yeah, no, you're talking a lot of sense there. For once, says I, if I have to give a day back, and throwing digs left, right, and centre. Before we move on, I just want to go back just to the overall winner, and if we have some dramatic music, now would be the time to play it. Sean, I'm not sure you're going to pull the violin out of there or something, set of drums. But it is, of course, the overall football iPredict competition, and we do have a €25 coffeestore.ie voucher for the winner. So I'm just going to pull the table up on screen here if technology works, and the winner is column 27, which I'm pretty certain is Colin Moran for back home in Meltown. So that prize won't have to travel too far. Who's top of the pile there? Himself and Nina had been neck and neck for a while. I've finished up just outside the Champions League places there in 5th. I think I might get Thursday night football in the Europa for me. And who's that just behind me there?
I'll be joining you, I think.
It is indeed. So no, it was great. No, thanks for everyone for joining along. We certainly had a bit of fun with it, and congrats again to Colm. And that voucher will be in the post or electronic mail or whatever the format is. So thanks again for everyone for joining. Of course, while the hurling and football are over for the time being, the Premier League competition, it'll still be ongoing. So if that is your sport of kind, it is there as well to play along, and we do of course have the Kyle Duff fundraiser is still ongoing as well for their football team. It feels like we're kind of drawn a knot really on the year. We've gone through the victorious Dublin team. We've kind of skimmed over the final. We've given out the winner. I predict? Let's just wrap it up and put you both on the spot. If I was anyway organising, Paul loves this sort of stuff, because if anyone that doesn't know, Paul has about 20 copies of A4 copies in front of him there with notes. I'd say he's watched the final back about 5 or 6 times now with the tactical cam on and off. Easy one, says I. Footballer of the year?
For me?
Why not?
I think it would be, it's obviously a Dublin player. Personally, it would be very hard to see past Kieran Kilkenny. I think he's, besides Brian Finton, he's the guy that makes that Dublin team tick. And Not that they were ever in any serious trouble in any game this year, but any time they needed a guy to step up, even the last night, as we spoke about earlier, the start of the game didn't quite happen for him. He's just got that supreme confidence to block all that out. And when Dublin needed him the other night again, he was there. So for me, it would be Kilkenny, very consistent all year. Just a magical footballer, just strength, directness, great score taker. He, I suppose, embodies everything about this great Dublin team. So for me, it'd be Kilkenny, Kieran Kilkenny.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the popular choice as well. Paul, would you agree, or are you going to pull one of your Cavan lads out? Tommy Callan or something like that, yeah.
I was going to give it to, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right. Is it Mark Keane? Is that the lad that got the goal?
No, that's a low dig. No, that is a low dig. Coming up Christmas time, the Christmas spirit, eh?
Like Kilkenny there, like I think it's hard to. He's been just so consistent every game. He's just popping up with 2 or 3 scores. He's linking the play. He's just running up and down. He's just an all-rounder really. And like it just the way, as I said, like he can sense an opportunity. Like if he gathers the ball and he nearly just look at the defender in the eye and he go, I'm going to just make you go this way, and he just cuts in and just kicks it over or whatever. Like he just has a great presence on the field. I thought, let's say, Finton was kind of the lad that I was thinking of before the match, but like in fair play to kind of the Mayo midfield, they had a good day at the office there, so I didn't think he was as influential as other games, but like I think Kilkenny he just seems like an all-rounder there just all year, so I can't disagree there with Sean.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'll keep mine brief as well. You can't disagree with that. Maybe O'Callaghan earlier in the year was probably the more prominent of the two, perhaps. I know they kind of switched their roles back and forth, but Kilkenny, and just whenever, if there's even an element of doubt in the game, you feel like he's the guy to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, and he was class again in the final, as we've come to expect. Last one then before we let you go, your moment of the year. Paul, go to you first. Your favourite moment of the year, one moment that counts, and you're not allowed to mention the goal because you've taken 5 or 6 takes out of her already.
If I knew this was coming up, I wouldn't use it. You're going to have to send on the questions before anymore.
No. It's more fun catching you. Particularly someone that's as studious as you.
Stop. Mine would be probably, like, I don't think anyone would foreseen it, but it's probably Cavan winning the Ulster final, because I was backing them there all year. So just the way they went about it, like, and even like the photos and the scenes after, like Galligan looked like he just out of World War II, and there'll be heroes there for not just this year but for years to come, and I'd say that probably is my moment of the year when Cavan bet Donegal in the Ulster final. And you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm going to go for a similar one, but down here instead, my moment of the year was when Tipperary beat Cork in the Munster final.
Yeah, see now where he's coming from this.
I thought, no, look, in all honesty, it was fantastic for Tipperary, for the Tipperary people, for Tipperary football. We all know what great hurlers they have, and for a long, long, long time, the footballers have lived in the shadow of the hurlers, and I thought it was also very, very apt, considering the 100-year anniversary of Bloody Sunday, that Tipperary won that game and won it in the jerseys that they were wearing as well on the day. I thought it was a lovely, lovely moment for them. And as I said, not that I know them, but there was a lot of those Tipperary guys who have soldiered a long time with the footballers, and to see them get their day in the sun was just fantastic. The fact that it was Cork they beat made it all that little bit sweeter, I suppose.
Very, very good. I have to say, that was a great moment as well. For me, that was wasn't the biggest shock, and I'm going to have to lean towards the Cavan one, because I actually felt that Tipperary had a good chance. So, although don't get me wrong, it's a huge achievement. The scenes were remarkable, particularly when their hurlers were knocked out the day before as well, and everything came together on that. But it was the Cavan for me was kind of the one that really, really shocked you. Everybody was had planned out how Dublin were going to line up, or Donegal were going to line up against Donegal, etc. How that potential semi-final, we didn't get to see it in the end, but the Cavan scenes were just remarkable, and I'd probably have to lean to that. I guess the other thing as well is the biggest moment for me is the collective moments of that we did have sport, not in different, hugely strange circumstances, without crowds, had an eerie feeling at time to games. But the fact that we've had this for the last couple of months, to be on here every week talking about it and having chit chats back and forth, has been a great light at the end of the tunnel, really. And we're certainly going to miss it now coming in. I know Christmas will distract it a bit, but and hopefully it won't be too long before the new season starts up again with the new structure. But as an overall, you have to say there's been a huge, colossal amount of work. We can't even attempt to go near thanking everyone involved, but you know yourself in your own clubs, the amount of work that went on just to get guys training, never mind guys taking part in games, and replicate that all over the country. And I'll hold my hand up as well. I was initially thought it was irresponsible earlier in the year. I think I was saying having games like this when everything was going on, but it's been proved me completely wrong. Everything was carried out in such a safe environment, and the measures, I know for myself, I'm going to games in as well, the level of detail required in the planning. So just from all across all the clubs, all the associations, everyone involved, thank you very much, because it's a welcome distraction, we have to say. There's been a lot of doom and gloom around, but to have that every week has been a great outlet for not just us, but I think the big sporting community in Ireland. But that's it, folks. The Gaelic football and hurling calendar for 2020 has gone. It's a year we'll never forget. It's probably a sporting year we'll never forget. We'll definitely be talking about the Dublin 6 in a row for years to come. We'll probably be talking about Cavan. We'll probably be talking about Tipperary. Paul will probably still be talking about that goal, but there we go. Might be one in 30 years. But firstly, before I go, I want to thank yourself, Sean, and Paul as well for joining us here every week. It's been a pleasure having a bit of chit chat, and I hope everyone has enjoyed our dodgy jokes along the way half as much as we've enjoyed them. And Paul is relieved now; he doesn't have all that extra homework to do for next week. But joking aside, thanks very much, guys. Thanks to everybody who's played along and had some fun with us. Thanks again to coffeestore.ie for sponsoring the prizes. We'll get in touch with both winners as well. And don't forget, if you do want to top up your coffee or tea collection, coffeestore.ie, and put in the code iPredict on checkout, and you'll get a 5% discount. But Merry Christmas, everyone. Stay safe. Hope you enjoyed our rambles, and hopefully we'll be back in 2021 to talk even more rubbish about hurling and football.